Hi, everybody. My name is Khawaja. This is the Cash It podcast. Super duper excited here to have Eric Johnston join us today. Eric, say hello.
Hello. How's everybody?
So excited to have you here. I'm a little disappointed. I expected to see you wearing the Sam Squirrel costume. And for those of us who haven't heard about it, can you tell us a little bit about the history of the Sam Squirrel? It's one of my favorite endearing animals.
Yeah, I can. So first of all, you'll have to live with the disappointment. I won't be able to go put it on right now, but we'll wear it at some point. We'll work it out. So the Sam costume actually was around before I came to AWS. It was worn by several before me. Drew, which you may or may not know who Drew was. Drew was one of our PMs. Drew, I think, was one of the first. He and Tim Wagner procured. I don't know where they got it. So I'm assuming they paid for it. I don't know. They procured this costume. And then when I came, I was the new guy. And so when it was time to wear the same costume, man, Chris Munns was like, he'll do it. I was like, thanks, Chris. But it makes sense. I'm the Sam guy, right? So I wear the same costume everywhere. And, but yeah, so that's how I came to it. So I've worn it obviously throughout the years at reInvent. And I mean, I could spend this whole hour telling you funny stories about wearing that costume at reInvent. But yeah, so that's kind of the history.
So at Momento, there's a lot of debate about, I think Alan is very much a Sam person and Ellery, tends to prefer CDK. A lot of inclusive, everybody's got a perspective. And, but the fact that Sam has a squirrel, I mean,
that's right.
And Momento
is
our model is a squirrel. I guess company affinity has to be just a little bit biased towards Sam.
I think you're right. And if you look, and we've done a lot of data on comparing Sam and CDK, and kind of the qualitative data was when I whipped the pants off Matt Bonig in the dance-off contest. And I beat him wearing the Sam. This is reInvent last year. Wearing the Sam Squirrel. He wore Pancakes the Otter. We had the Dance Revolution dance-off, and I won. We had one dance, and then I went and passed out because, it's hot, and that's crazy. But so there you go. Sam's the way to go.
I know after last reInvent, you swore that you're never going to wear that costume in Vegas again. But, if I can find a way to procure a Momento, a Mo Squirrel costume, would you be willing to take on a dance-off challenge with somebody at Momento? It could be Mo versus Sam the Squirrel.
I'm telling you right now, if I say yes, Matt Bonig will be there. He's threatened to do it. And there's been all kinds of people who have challenged me, but I'm going to think about that because, I've been called out and I've never been one to turn away from a challenge. So yeah, I'll get my answer to you, but I mean, peer pressure says probably so.
All right. We'll get right on that. Now, moving on from Sam the Squirrel, one of the most profound mechanisms that I've found or learning tool that I found for people to appreciate the real power of serverless is the Serverlesspresso project. And, I'd love to hear what inspired you to build it and what has the response been so far and what do you intend to do with it going forward?
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to kind of level set, credit here. Serverlesspresso was the brainchild of James Bezic. 100% that was James's idea. And it was kind of funny because he had actually presented it a couple times and no, we're not going to do this. So after pandemic came out, so James Bezic and Ben Smith built this. To be honest, I really didn't work. I did some, a little bit of, hey, you should do this and you should do this, but they are the ones who built it. They get the credit. It was kind of funny. So we'll get into your story here. We built Serverlesspresso for one event. That was it. It was going to be run at reInvent 2021 and never be run again, right? That was the plan. It was okay. And it was so wildly popular at reInvent that it was like, oh, hey. And like true, it was really interesting because like true developers, we built plenty of technical debt into Serverlesspresso, right? It's like, oh my gosh, we need to refactor this a little and do it right. Because what happened is in December, we got a call, and it was from our counterparts, our colleagues in Saudi Arabia. It says, we want you to bring Serverlesspresso to Saudi Arabia. And I mean, there's like, well, that would be cool, but there's no way that's going to happen, right? No, it happened. They said, okay, let's go. There's 100,000 person event called Leap. They run in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. I had never been there, and those are stories. I could tell you stories about that too. But and so we took it there, and we quickly realized that they wanted it at all the summits, third party events. Everybody wanted this because, going back to what you said, it's a tangible explanation of event-driven architecture on serverless. It is something you can touch and feel and see in action, and people love. We can tell them about it, but when you see it in action, it's a whole different idea. So how I came to kind of play in this is, obviously my team built it. One of the things we did is we tried to take a lot of hey, we'll do the extra stuff. You guys concentrate on the code. But I remember when we realized, wow, we're going to need to kind of manage this as it's going around the world. We need to send teams and do this. We need someone to kind of run with that. And James Bezic literally went, Eric, you do it. I was like, oh, so I did it. And actually, there's no complaint. I'm very happy. I had a ball. Our team went all over. But then Ben Smith actually said, the truth is, Serverlesspresso's outgrown our team. Right. And I'm sure you have more questions. I'm just talking a mile a minute, but I'll wrap up in a second here. Well, Serverlesspresso outgrew our team. And we know, but man, we don't have the manpower to keep up with everywhere it's going. So Ben Smith built this idea called Serverlesspresso in a box. And the idea is you could become an authorized Serverlesspresso presenter. You build your own kit, and then you go out. And for a while, we were helping kind of distribute the kits. And then you go out and you present this. And we now have solutions architects all over the globe who are certified to run Serverlesspresso. And so Ben just killed it with that program. They killed it on all this, but kind of credit where credit's due. That's kind of the story of Serverlesspresso and where it's at now. And you asked, where's it going? It's just continually. I literally still get emails. Hey, we're running serverless days in South Africa. We want Serverlesspresso. Hey, we're running, places I have never even heard of until it's like, oh, hey, guess where you're going, in a couple of weeks. So that's been an adventure.
Well, I know.
Yeah, that's right.
I know where it's going to be next week.
Tokyo, baby.
And it's going to be at, on a little part of Tokyo called Odaiba, at the NTT Docomo Innovations Lab, where you're going to actually tell people how it works. And everybody there is super excited about receiving it. I know you were there at MoCon, last month, and it was one of the most memorable hits of the conference, getting not only the fact that they could get coffee, but just how simple it is to understand what event-driven architecture can do for your pace of development, for getting things out there, and for just breaking, this massive problem into smaller pieces.
Well, I think that's just it. Sometimes we look at applications and we think about, it's all in front of me, and I can't, I'm overwhelmed by this. And so when you see something like Serverlesspresso, it's like, oh, okay, I see what they did. They've got a front end they built. They've got an order management system. They've got a barista, and so they built that out. So it's really easy to go, okay, I can attach this, or I can attack this in small chunks. Going back to Tokyo real quick, I want to tell you, just so you know, I just sent it off to print. We have special, I made that they're one-off, one-time only Serverlesspresso in Tokyo stickers. So those will be, we did this one time in Australia. This is the first time it had been over there. And so this is the only time you're able to get these stickers, and they've got glitter borders. They're pretty cool. My girls took me into the glitter borders.
Oh my goodness. If there's something, who's the biggest Serverlesspresso fan? Who's got all of the stickers for every single location?
Oh man. Well, probably me, because generally we had just the generic ones, right? So Serverless generic. The first time we did a location one was Australia. I've got one on my laptop. And I think James has one, and Ben probably has one. And then and probably all the team. I mean, our whole team is fully vested in this. So and then this will be the second one, the Tokyo one.
So I noticed, you work at Amazon, and Amazon always is launching new services and, over time, more and more serverless capabilities. So how do you think about what services you can use Serverlesspresso as an educational tool for, or not? And what does your roadmap look like in terms of, integrating services that may not be a part of it? Or is that even part of the way you decide what, what goes in?
So we put a lot of thought into this, right? One of the things one of the things we want to teach in serverless is the right tool for the job, right? It's not just look, because as you know as well as I do. I mean, you're obviously an expert in serverless. You have a fantastic background, DynamoDB, and all that kind of stuff. Very common serverless, like any other language, like any other technology. It's like, how do you do A? And the answer is, well, it depends. I don't want it depends. I want a, how do you do it? So we tried to be very prescriptive with Serverlesspresso. This is how you do it. These are the best practices, stuff like that. And we've had, even internally, it's like, hey, we want you to add this service to it. It's like, yeah, but if it doesn't make sense, we're not going to add the overhead. So we've been pretty protective of, what goes in it. So I don't know, to answer your question, right now, we don't have any plans to add anything else. I will tell you, you've probably seen some of the tweets, and all I'll say is, reInvent this year is going to be interesting. It's going to be fun. We have something new coming. So, you'll want to, and I can't, I'll probably get shot by James for even just saying that. But, so James, don't listen to this. Yeah.
Oh no, Eric leaks that new service that's going to be announced at reInvent.
It's a new,
we do.
Just the DAs are doing something. So, so we're pretty excited.
Oh,
yeah. So we're pretty excited about that. So
you're going to give a plushie for every service, and we're going to do a much
there you go. Yeah, it's going to be crazy. So, but yeah, that's the goal right now. We feel like Serverlesspresso, I mean, we're always working on, anytime we clean up, we've done some work on the front end, things like that. But we really feel like it's at the point where we've got a workshop built around it. We've got presentations built around it. We have the demo. It's a good working system. And so we're kind of like, okay, there it is. And one of the things, internally, one of the things to talk about with our role is we duplicate ourselves. I mean, as you level up, things like that, one of your goals is duplicate yourself. Our team just can't go everywhere and do Serverlesspresso, but we have an army of SAs that are very talented that have this. So we are kind of handing Serverlesspresso over to them. We'll always have our finger on the pulse of what's going on, making sure it's good. And we'll direct it, but we're kind of probably stopping the work on it for right now.
Got it. And I understand that there's this notion of Serverlesspresso extensions. Can you talk a little bit about that?
There is, yeah. So let's go to the technology again. If you're not familiar with the technology, the idea is we build this event-driven architecture, right? Event-driven architecture, you were at Memento. People get a chuckle when I define event-driven architecture. But if you think about event-driven architecture, in the simplest form, it is something happens and we react, right? Rather than, it's so much, the way we build, kind of legacy architectures, if I do something, I got to tell everybody about it. I got to call, I got to do all this kind of stuff. So bring that to Serverlesspresso. What we decided is how easy, and we built extensions, one, so people could play around with it, but two, so you could see once you have a pattern in place, it's very easy to extend and build on event-driven architecture. So we say, so in this idea, look, we're passing all these events around. Someone made an order, the barista accepted the order. The store ran out of milk. There, all these different events are going around. So to build extensions, you can actually just listen for events and say, look, I want to do something like, I want to collect how many white chocolate mocha frappuccinos did Eric drink in one day? You know what I mean? So that event's traveling around. You can listen to that event and react on it. Make it, or you can there's all kinds of things. We've had folks talk about robotics. We've had folks talk about, analytics, games, all kinds of different ideas. So that's what the extensions are for, is tapping in and saying, because of EDA, we can lock down the actual application. We're not sharing the code and saying, hey, what we're sharing is, here's the data that's going through the system. Do whatever you want with it. And it's open. Obviously we don't share, we follow HIPAA and PCI and all the whatever, socks and shoes and whatever. It's, those kind of things we have. So, but yeah, so that's kind of the idea of extensions in what we can do with it. I know I don't want to steal your thunder, but aren't you thinking of something? Or
Yeah, Alan and I have been working and ideating with you on the some Memento specific extensions for Serverlesspresso as well. And, for the audience, love to hear, what is the format? Like, how do I hook in? Am I listening to a Kinesis stream? Is it webhooks? Let's get into the nitty gritties.
So for the most part, you're listening to EventBridge, your EventBridge bus. So we really truly took the idea of domains, right? We have our order system, we have our fulfillment system. Here's the different domains, here's the different parts of it. So we choreograph data between these using EventBridge. So when something happens, we toss it on EventBridge, and everybody's aware that, oh, something happened, I grabbed it. And then we orchestrate internally. Really, step functions, kind of the hero in, I just gave away the punchline there. The hero in Serverlesspresso is step functions, right? Step functions just massive amount of orchestrating under the hood. When you order a coffee, there's some stuff going on. We can get into that nitty gritty if you want, but as things happen, it's kicking out events, right? And so if you're listening to those events, that's how you can build your extension. You get this data through there, and you can say, I'm going to write a rule that says every time somebody orders this kind of coffee, or every time something's canceled, or every time a coffee is ordered, invoke another step function in my, here, or a Lambda function or whatever.
And therein lies the power of event-driven architectures. You can build something and you can keep supercharging it with new capabilities and new services that you haven't even thought of when you built the system, without having to go untangle it, refactor it, redeploy it in the model.
Yeah, we talk about, if this were building in a monolithic app, I'd have to be identifying lines of code. Now, there's a good chance inside that application I was using a bus, I was using a some pub sub and things like that. I hope so. I mean, that's the modern way of building things. But I'm still looking for lines of codes where these are very isolated off. Hey, this is happening. In fact, there's very few actual lines of code in Serverlesspresso. Most of it is just configuration because all we're doing is moving data around and reacting to it, right? We have some lines of code for printing. There's probably more in the front end than anywhere.
You did one of my favorite things, which is to use lines of code golf, right? Where you're not saying, look how big and enormous this thing is. It's valuable because you use fewer lines of code. I love that. And that then goes back to the simplicity of event-driven architectures.
Well, let's talk reality for a minute. And I say this is a joke, but there's truth to it. And if James were standing here, or somebody has to, manage my code, they'd be like, yeah, you don't want Eric Johnson's code unless you desperately need it. And that, I'm a decent developer. I can hold my own. I'm not Alan Helton, that's for sure. You know what I mean? So whatever he is as a batter, I watched him swing. He wasn't that good. But from a code, that's true. I'm just making fun of him. Al, he's very sharp. He's built some really cool things. But the reality is, a lot of developers are kind of, we learned in the middle of the night. We Googled stuff. We, things like that. So anytime you can reduce the amount of Eric Johnson's code in your application, you're building reliability into your app. So all kidding aside, yeah, I'm not. I was given this presentation over in Australia, and I was talking about EventBridge pipes. Right, we were talking about how do you route stuff around and not having to do it. And over I had said, and we're getting rid of this Lambda function. We're not doing this. Finally, this guy raises his hand and says, what do you have against Lambda? And I was like, man, sorry, maybe I'm overdoing it a little bit. I said, I have nothing against AWS Lambda functions, compute in general. I think it's a very critical part of the application. But again, right tool for the job. I should only be using a Lambda function when I want to apply, let's just say it straight up, business logic that makes me money, right? I mean, this is the important stuff. If I'm just routing data, then I shouldn't be spinning my wheels on code.
More moving pieces
Mm.
adds serverless, and it's more surface area that you got to test, you got to cover, you got to anticipate problems with
Yeah.
things that can go down. So I love Lambda. I love, Dynamo, but again, fewer moving pieces, always going to be better. And I say this as a person at,
Yeah.
selling cash services, and we go out and tell, whereas very often where they're doing things like, you don't actually need a cache necessarily in some scenarios.
right.
Don't add it if you don't need it. So fewer moving pieces is a really good philosophy, but I like the rule. I'm going to try to publicize the Eric Johnson rule of high availability. The fewer Eric Johnson lines of code that you have,
You can't use
the
my
more
name.
available your
You
system
can't be
will
out
be.
there and say, you got to use your own. No, actually, you can. I'm just kidding.
You do.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's funny. Let me tell you how I started developing. If you've got a moment here, it's a 2-minute story. 2-minute story
Yeah.
I can turn into 10. But I don't know if you know much about my background. I was actually a pastor. I've been a pastor for like 12 years. Then I stepped down because I have 5 kids, and that's way too many kids. But there they are, So I have these 5. So I stepped down. Still nothing. Still great in my church, things like that. And I decided, okay, I need to do something else. So I became a designer, and I was working for this company. I was their designer, and there's a lot of lead up to that, but basically that's it. And our developer quit, and so they said to me, Eric, who should we hire? What do we need? So you need a really good C# developer, because that's what we're building, back in Razor, MVP, all that kind of stuff. So you go just hire a really solid C# developer and I'll be the designer. They said, okay. So I went on vacation. When I came back, they said, we did it. We hired somebody. I said, great. They said, yeah, we hired a really good designer. You're the developer. What? And that's how I became a developer. And I learned on the job, C#, Java, HTML, all the things. I had already known, the client side stuff, but so I have no formal training. There's just probably someone at AWS. Why are we paying this guy? But I had no formal training as a developer. Everything I learned in the middle of the night after the kids went. So I just loved it so much that I just dug in.
That's true.
What's that, I'm sorry?
That's true for some of the developers I know. Formal training is not done at universities. Formal training is done engineering real world systems. So I don't think anybody at Amazon is going to be concerned about. But I think I've learned that that the Eric Johnson rule of high availability applies to teams too. Fewer people makes things more available, move faster. So when you collapse the designer and developer into one role, that is a smaller team, that is a more nimble individual who can do more and can move faster. And and I think we see that, and serverless makes it easier and easier for front-end developers to rely even less, I think, on a large back-end team as well.
So you basically just described the 2 pizza team, right? That you hear so many times. Yeah. That's the Amazon way, is small, agile teams. Siloed agile teams. And so, but it's interesting, in serverless, we kind of have to modify the 2 pizza team a little bit. Because if you think about the 2 pizza team, think about EC2. I build I didn't, let's say the EC2 developers. I build EC2. That's all I worry about. That doesn't matter. This is how it's done. Boom. We're in a silo. Great. The thing with serverless is when you're building serverless applications, you're not building a monolithic application inside of a service like EC2. You're chaining together, like we're talking about, removing code. So we're using services. You're chaining together managed services. So you can't in the serverless realm, all these services go, look, we do our own thing. We're not going to talk to you. And we really need to work with the other services and we work hard to do that. Do we always get it right? No. There's sometimes like, oh, well, could have should have thought of that and stuff. But that's the thing is we have to work in building those up. But you're right. As far as there's an agility in reducing the number of fingers in the pot, right?
I gave a talk at reInvent 2014 with Charlie Bell on the reason why 2 pizza teams exist. And one of the things was, it increases ownership, but the other part of it is you can actually continuously decompose teams into smaller and smaller teams as areas of responsibilities kind of become clear. And then you surround them with a walled garden of APIs. So this notion of microservices is very much aligned with the original service-oriented architecture that Amazon has been pushing for the last 20 years, right? Each one of those components that you described have their own APIs and have their own interfaces that they can use to coordinate with each other. And I think event-driven architecture just solidifies it a little bit further.
It does. Yeah. That's interesting because we get into these conversations like, look, there's no more APIs. Well, yeah, there are. You know what I mean? Obviously, we're using APIs, but we're not calling and talking back and forth between the APIs. We're just announcing through events. I did this. If you care, you care. But you're right. The contract is still at the different levels. So I have a contract that says I expect this kind of event to be coming out. So rather than me having a contract with an API, the contract is with the event or the event. I don't know where you want to draw that line, but that event saying, I expect this event to come out in a certain way, which is kind of interesting. And Dave, we've had several, with Gregor Hope has done talks on this, obviously, but you talk about designing events. David Bourne does a talk on this. We've all done talks on it. I've done a talk on it, but in designing events and in where do you draw the line? How much is in the event? How much is just referencing the event? So, and I know that's a little bit of a rabbit you're chasing, but it does make for interesting design when you're thinking about what's the right event pattern, what's the right event architecture, things like that.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure having you. I am really excited that I have secured a dance off with Sam the Squirrel.
No, I don't think you've secured it. I said, I think you've pressured me into it and I'll probably cave. But if you want to call that secured.
I fell into a duel with, and it might be a truel. I don't know what, like a three-way duel, right?
Dude, look at you. You're healthy. I will pass out next to you. That doesn't stop me.
Let dance. So, well, if you want to run the 5K, the Reba 5K,
let me tell you straight up, I have done one marathon in my life. Believe it or not, I did the Mayor's Marathon in Alaska. I did the half marathon, and I walked the whole thing. And there was a lady. This is a true story. There was a lady in front of me in a walker, and I couldn't get around her. She was too fast for me. I mean, I was walking. My wife was dancing. My wife's very thin and healthy and stuff, and she's dancing along. And I just, oh my gosh! So that's the last marathon. 5K, whatever, I'll probably do.
All right. Well, you've secured the dance off. We know what the Eric Johnson rule of high availability is and how it applies to 2 pizza teams. And we know that Serverlesspresso is amazing. It's real good pleasure to have you. Thank you for taking the time and see you in Tokyo.
Yeah. Look forward to it. See you later. Thanks for having me.